What if the animated dreams of the 1990s weren't all laughter and color, but nightmares too dangerous for the world to see? Behind the smiles and catchy songs, some films sparked outrage so fierce they vanished from shelves, censored into oblivion. Tonight, we dig up those forbidden reels, 15 animated movies so controversial that, even today, adults are warned to look away. Number 15. The Thief and the Cobbler, 1993. Once hailed as the most ambitious animated feature ever attempted, The Thief and the Cobbler was Richard Williams' passion project. Its reputation soared during production. Whispers claimed it would surpass Disney itself. The story followed a humble cobbler and a wily thief caught in a surreal Arabian fantasy, filled with optical illusions and dazzling set pieces unlike anything before. But here's the twist. This film was cursed by its own brilliance. Williams labored on it for nearly 3 decades, chasing perfection. Studios grew impatient, budgets exploded, and rumors swirled that the animation was too strange for mainstream family audiences. By the early 1990s, Warner Brothers panicked. Executives demanded edits, story rewrites, and new songs. The film was butchered into a clumsy cut, stripped of its artistry, and quietly buried. Critics attacked the released versions, calling them incoherent and lifeless. Audiences walked away confused. For years, the original vision became a ghost, whispered about in animation circles but hidden from public view. VHS releases were heavily altered, and screenings of unfinished cuts were locked away. Its aftermath is almost mythical. Animators still speak of the lost masterpiece, piecing together bootleg, recobbled editions from scraps and work prints. For many fans, The Thief and the Cobbler remains not just a banned film, but a broken promise. A vision too radical, too uncompromising, and too dangerous for the studios that feared it. In the end, it reflects the cruel truth of the decade. Sometimes brilliance itself was censored. Number 14. Little Nemo. Adventures in Slumberland, 1992. On paper, Little Nemo should have been magical. Adapted from Winsor McCay's beloved early 20th century comic strip, it promised wonder, a boy traveling through Slumberland, encountering surreal palaces, nightmare kings, and fantastical creatures. When it premiered in Japan, critics praised its dreamlike visuals, calling it a daring experiment in East-West collaboration. But the American release told a different story. Parents' groups accused the film of being too frightening for children. Dark imagery of shadow monsters and distorted dreamscapes sparked panic in an era already nervous about children's media. Religious organizations argued that the dreamlike logic contained occult themes, fueling rumors that the film harbored subliminal messages. Behind the scenes, chaos reigned. The project cycled through dozens of directors, including legends like George Lucas and Chuck Jones. Each walked away citing creative battles with producers. Production delays ballooned costs, and whispers emerged that studios feared lawsuits if traumatized children suffered nightmares. When the film limped into American theaters, distributors barely promoted it. Some theaters pulled it after a week, pressured by complaints. The result? Little Nemo vanished quickly, with home video releases either censored or impossible to find. For decades, American audiences only knew it through fuzzy imports or whispered nostalgia. Over time, it gained a cult reputation among animation scholars, admired for its audacity, yet haunted by its suppression. Its legacy reminds us, in the 1990s, even dreams could be banned. The line between fantasy and forbidden territory was thinner than anyone dared to admit. Number 13. Felidae, 1994. When it first slinked onto German screens, Felidae looked like just another animated feature, but this was no fairy tale. Adapted from Akif Pirinci's crime novel, it told the story of Francis, a house cat investigating grisly feline murders across a crumbling city. What unfolded was a noir drenched in blood, cult rituals, and brutal violence, all animated with unnerving detail. Imagine children's audiences expecting a whimsical adventure, only to be greeted with graphic autopsies of cats, nightmarish visions of experiments, and characters mutilated beyond recognition. In Germany, critics were stunned, some praising its ambition, others warning it was trauma disguised as animation. When distributors considered international release, parents groups in both the United States and Britain sounded alarms. They labeled it cartoon horror, and censors refused mainstream distribution. Behind the scenes, the film's creators knew controversy was inevitable. Animation studios had already struggled to fund it. No major company wanted its name attached. Rumors claimed American studios blocked import deals, fearing lawsuits from shocked parents. The VHS release was limited, often tucked away in adults-only sections, and heavily edited cuts circulated on television. The aftermath was chilling. Feliday gained notoriety in underground circles, often passed between animation students and horror buffs who couldn't believe such a film even existed. Decades later, it remains largely unavailable, with uncut versions surfacing only through imports or online leaks. Its legacy is proof that the 1990s pushed boundaries, but some boundaries terrified distributors enough to erase entire films from history. Number 12. Aichi and Sipak, 1999. Few animated films have provoked as much bewildered laughter and censorship as the South Korean cult oddity Aichi and Sipak. On the surface, it was an outrageous sci-fi comedy about two petty criminals navigating a dystopia powered by human waste. The bizarre premise, paired with violent gang wars and surreal humor, made it infamous even before release. But here's the twist. Censors weren't laughing. Korean authorities panicked, branding it unfit for general audiences due to its crude themes and relentless gore. Distributors overseas hesitated, with rumors spreading that major festivals rejected it behind closed doors. By the time it screened, it had already been cut down, stripped of some of its most violent sequences. Behind the scenes, chaos brewed. The filmmakers struggled against financial collapse, reanimating scenes multiple times after investor pullouts. Animators later revealed that the project nearly collapsed 3 times, each time resurrected by sheer stubbornness. International buyers considered it too risky. Some territories banned imports outright. Audience reaction divided. Cult fans praised its audacity, hailing it as a foul-mouthed, animated Tarantino. Critics, however, recoiled, calling it offensive beyond satire. The censorship ensured it never reached mainstream audiences, condemned to niche midnight screenings and rare DVD runs. Today, Aichi and Sipak lives on as a whispered legend, a movie so grotesque and defiant that many still can't believe it exists. It proved that the 1990s weren't just about family animation. They also produced films too anarchic to survive. Number 11. Cool World, 1992. When Ralph Bakshi, the rebellious animator behind Fritz the Cat, announced Cool World, expectations ran high. Marketed as a darker, edgier alternative to Who Framed Roger Rabbit, it promised a collision of flesh and ink, with cartoon femme fatale Holly scheming to cross into the human world. But the production spiraled into chaos. Paramount executives feared Bakshi's original vision, reportedly far more violent and surreal. They ordered rewrites mid-shoot, stripping away storylines and forcing the film into a half-baked hybrid of noir, comedy, and fantasy. Actors Brad Pitt and Kim Basinger were caught in the storm, with critics later noting their confused performances as signs of a script reassembled on the fly. The controversy didn't stop there. Early cuts of Cool World were screened to test audiences, who erupted in outrage at its bizarre tone. Executives ordered more edits, and whispers spread that entire reels had been destroyed. Rumors swirled that Basinger had personally pushed for a softer cut, hoping to turn it into a family-friendly story, which clashed violently with Bakshi's intent. When it premiered, critics shredded it. Roger Ebert called it incomprehensible, while others warned parents not to be fooled by its cartoon exterior. Internationally, some theaters refused to screen it, branding it morally dubious. Its home video release was heavily restricted in several regions, and it quickly vanished from shelves. The legacy of Cool World is one of betrayal, an ambitious vision censored, reshaped, and buried by studio panic. It serves as a reminder that even in the 1990s, when animation seemed untouchable, some experiments scared Hollywood itself. Number 10. Rock and Rule, 1991 re-release. Though originally made in the early 80s, Rock and Rule returned in the 1990s with a re-edited cut that sparked a storm of bans and censorship. On paper, it was groundbreaking, an adult animated rock opera set in a dystopian future where mutant animals carried the torch of human culture. Its story followed a villainous rock star, Mock, who tried to summon a demon through music. But when distributors tried to revive it for a new audience in 1991, the backlash was immediate. Religious groups claimed the film glorified occult rituals, pointing to sequences of demonic possession and apocalyptic imagery. Parents complained that its animation style was too close to Saturday morning cartoons, arguing that children could stumble into something far darker than they were prepared for. Behind the scenes, production companies had battled censors since day one. Dialogue was softened, songs were cut, and international versions differed wildly. MGM even shelved some reels in storage, fearing lawsuits if it was mismarketed to families. Audiences who did see it were divided. Some hailed it as a visionary, animated Blade Runner with music by Debbie Harry and Iggy Pop. Others walked out, scandalized by its violence and mature themes. Television networks refused to air it, and the re-release quietly disappeared. Its legacy? Rock and Rule became a cult classic whispered about in music and animation circles, proof that even decades later, a film could still be too dangerous to show. The re-release buried it once more, cementing its reputation as an outlaw in the world of animation. Number 9. Urotsukidoji, Legend of the Overfiend, 1993 international ban. Imported from Japan in the early 1990s, Urotsukidoji sent shockwaves across Western censors. On the surface, it was an animated fantasy horror epic about a demonic prophecy reshaping the human world. But its infamous content went far beyond the limits of what Western distributors dared to allow. When it landed in the United Kingdom and United States, censors moved immediately. Entire scenes were excised, and some regions refused classification altogether, essentially banning it. Rumors swirled that screenings in Britain had provoked fainting and outrage. Religious groups called it corruption in cartoon form, and tabloids whipped up headlines warning parents of the animated apocalypse now circulating on VHS. Behind the curtain, the controversy was even messier. Distributors argued over cuts, some wanting to tone it down for broader release, others pushing the shock factor to guarantee cult status. In Australia, police reportedly raided stores carrying uncut copies, cementing its infamy. Reception was equally divided. Hardcore anime fans praised it as bold, avant-garde, and boundary-breaking. Critics called it unwatchable, too extreme to be considered art. Most mainstream audiences never had the chance to decide. The bans ensured it lived only in underground circulation. Its legacy endures as one of the most heavily censored animations of the 1990s. It wasn't just a movie, it was a cultural panic, sparking debates about what animation could and should be allowed to depict. Number 8. Heavy Metal, 2000, 1999. The original Heavy Metal in 1981 was already controversial, but its 1999 sequel, Heavy Metal 2000, faced even more resistance. Based loosely on the graphic novel The Melting Pot, it followed a woman named Julie on a revenge quest across alien worlds, drenched in violence, surreal landscapes, and heavy guitar riffs. From the start, it was branded unfit for mainstream audiences. Critics blasted it as gratuitously violent, and early test screenings led to protests. In Canada, where the film was produced, some theaters refused to carry it, citing pressure from parents' associations. Distributors in Europe pulled planned releases, claiming it was indistinguishable from adult exploitation. Behind the scenes, chaos brewed. The film's animation house was under immense pressure to match the cult legacy of the original, but financial cuts forced shortcuts that critics quickly spotted. Reports suggest that executives forced the inclusion of more gore to keep fans happy, only worsening censorship battles. Reception was brutal. Critics shredded it as empty spectacle, and audiences dwindled. Home video sales were restricted, with unrated editions pulled from major retailers in both the United States and Britain. For years, it became a whisper of disappointment and danger, too extreme for casual viewers, yet too compromised for the hardcore fan base. The legacy of Heavy Metal 2000 is bittersweet. Instead of solidifying the franchise, it buried it. Yet its banning in several regions ensured it lives on as a symbol of the 1990s clash between underground animation and mainstream fear. Number 7. Perfect Blue, 1997. When Satoshi Kon's Perfect Blue debuted, critics hailed it as a masterpiece of psychological horror. It told the haunting story of Mima, a pop idol who abandons her career to pursue acting, only to spiral into paranoia, stalkers, and a blurring of reality and delusion. Its animation style was sleek, its story chillingly mature. But here's the twist: it was too much for censors. The 1990s audience wasn't ready for animated explorations of identity, obsession, and violence. Some international distributors banned it outright, declaring it unsuitable for any rating. Britain famously restricted it for years, with rumors that even edited versions were flagged by watchdogs. United States, it had only a limited underground VHS run. Behind the scenes, the director fought tooth and nail to preserve his vision. Studio execs panicked, pressuring Khan to soften its darker elements. He refused. That decision cemented its fate as a banned or heavily restricted release in multiple regions. Audiences who did manage to see it, at festivals, bootlegs, or years later, were stunned. Some walked out shaken, while others declared it revolutionary. Hollywood directors like Darren Aronofsky later cited it as inspiration, weaving echoes of Perfect Blue into Requiem for a Dream and Black Swan. The film's legacy is chilling. Its censorship only amplified its legend, making it one of the most sought-after, forbidden animated films of the 1990s. Today, it is remembered as proof that animation could cut as deeply as any thriller and terrify in ways live action never could. Number 6. South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut, 1999. The creators of South Park were already infamous for pushing boundaries on television, but when they unleashed their feature film in 1999, even seasoned censors recoiled. Marketed as a comedy, it delivered an avalanche of satire aimed at politics, media panic, and censorship itself. Its story followed the kids of South Park discovering a raunchy Canadian film, leading to outrage, riots, and even war. But here's where it turned explosive. Real governments and ratings boards moved to suppress it. In Ireland, entire sections were banned, while Australia nearly refused classification altogether. Parents' groups across America demanded boycotts, calling it animated corruption. Rumors swirled that entire theaters faced threats of fines if they screened the uncut version. Behind the curtain, Trey Parker and Matt Stone mocked the chaos, reportedly sneaking censored footage into test screenings just to provoke officials. The MPAA tried to force multiple edits, resulting in Parker and Stone openly ridiculing the process in interviews. Audiences, however, loved it. The film became a box office hit, but its bans only strengthened its reputation as a piece of forbidden satire. Decades later, critics recognized it as a razor-sharp commentary on censorship itself. Ironic, considering it was censored more than almost any other American animated film of its decade. Its legacy is clear. South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut, wasn't just a movie. It was a battle line in the culture wars of the 1990s, proving how terrified studios and governments were of laughter turned dangerous. Number 5. Princess Mononoke, 1997, censored release. At first glance, Hayao Miyazaki's Princess Mononoke looks like a sweeping fantasy about gods, forests, and human conflict. When it premiered in Japan, it shattered box office records, becoming one of the most beloved animated epics ever made. But when Western distributors prepared it for release, panic set in. The film's violent battles, decapitations, and unflinching portrayal of environmental destruction triggered immediate concern. In Britain and the United States, executives insisted on edits. Rumors circulated that censors wanted to slash entire sequences, cutting the running time drastically. Behind the scenes, an infamous battle unfolded. Producer Harvey Weinstein reportedly demanded cuts, only to be rebuked with a legendary response. Studio Ghibli sent him a katana with a note, "No cuts." Despite this defiance, some international markets still censored the release, softening or trimming violent moments. In other regions, it was quietly delayed or suppressed altogether. Audiences who did see it were awestruck, but many outside Japan only received compromised versions. For years, Princess Mononoke was considered too intense for children, placed in limbo between family animation and adult cinema. Its legacy is monumental. Today it is celebrated as one of the greatest animated films of all time, but its censorship reminds us how the 1990s feared anything that blurred the lines between beauty and brutality. Miyazaki proved animation could carry mythic weight, and that very power terrified distributors who couldn't categorize it. Number 4. Ninja Scroll, 1993. When Ninja Scroll premiered in Japan, it was hailed as a kinetic masterpiece, an adult animated samurai tale that blended myth, martial arts, and grotesque villains. Its story followed Jubei, a wandering swordsman, drawn into a web of political intrigue, supernatural enemies, and brutal combat. Its artistry was undeniable: fluid animation, breathtaking choreography, and an unflinching look at violence. But here's the twist. International audiences were horrified. Britain's Board of Film Classification demanded cuts, claiming it depicted extreme animated brutality. Australia outright banned it from general release, with police raids on imported VHS tapes rumored through the late 1990s. Even in the United States, some distributors pulled back, terrified of lawsuits from parents' groups who confused its anime packaging with children's entertainment. Behind the scenes, creators defended it as historical fantasy, meant for adults. But distributors kept clashing with censors, trimming frames, blurring sequences, or shelving screenings altogether. Reception was split. Anime fans called it groundbreaking, a film that redefined the possibilities of animated action. Critics, however, labeled it exploitative and dangerous. Its aftermath? Ninja Scroll became both a banned film and a cult legend, whispered about in dorm rooms and comic shops. It was proof that the 1990s still couldn't accept animation as a medium for adults, forcing masterpieces underground, where they became even more powerful. Number 3. Akira, 1991 international release. Though originally released in Japan in May 1988, Akira crashed into Western consciousness in the early 1990s. Its cyberpunk vision of Neo-Tokyo, where psychic teenagers unravel into godlike destruction, was unlike anything Western audiences had seen. It was hailed as revolutionary, the film that introduced anime to the global mainstream, but with glory came censorship. When it arrived in Britain and Australia, regulators demanded edits to its graphic violence, mutating bodies, crumbling cities, apocalyptic explosions. In some regions, distributors refused to screen it at all, branding it too extreme for classification. The VHS release in certain countries was chopped and fragmented, leaving audiences confused. Behind the curtain, its American release nearly collapsed. Studios feared it couldn't be marketed without lawsuits, and the dub became a rushed patchwork, an effort to soften its impact. Parents' groups across Europe lobbied against it, claiming it was corrupting youth through cartoons. Despite the bans, Akira became unstoppable. Its imagery seeped into Western pop culture, from music videos to Hollywood blockbusters, turning its censorship into fuel for legend. Its legacy is immortal. Akira didn't just survive being banned, it proved that forbidden art can reshape an entire generation's imagination. Number 2. Grave of the Fireflies, 1991. International release. Studio Ghibli is known for whimsy, but Grave of the Fireflies delivered heartbreak. Released overseas in the 1990s, it told the devastating story of two children struggling to survive in wartime Japan. With painterly beauty, it chronicled hunger, loss, and the slow extinguishing of innocence. But Western censors panicked. Some distributors refused to handle it, arguing it was too traumatic for animation. In Britain, screenings were limited, and television broadcasts were delayed for years. In the United States, early releases were buried in art house circuits, far from mainstream audiences. Behind the scenes, the debate raged. Was it abuse to market such sorrow through animation? Parents' groups thought so. Rumors spread that theaters pulled showings after audiences collapsed in tears. Executives feared lawsuits from traumatized viewers, shelving it from broader circulation. Reception, however, was extraordinary. Critics declared it one of the greatest war films ever made, animated or not. Yet, its bans meant entire audiences missed it for decades, only rediscovering it later through limited DVD runs. Its legacy is haunting. Grave of the Fireflies proved that truth, when wrapped in animation, can be too devastating for censors to handle. Its suppression showed just how far the 1990s went to shield audiences from pain, even when that pain was history itself. Number 1. Watership Down, 1993 TV adaptation ban. Richard Adams' Watership Down was already infamous for its brutality, but the 1993 animated TV adaptation reignited the fire. Marketed internationally as family-friendly, it shocked viewers with scenes of rabbits mauled, choked, and bloodied in stark detail. What was meant to be a classic story of survival became a cultural panic. In Britain, parents flooded broadcasters with complaints, claiming the series had scarred their children. Regulators investigated, and repeats were pulled from schedules. In Canada and Australia, networks banned later episodes, labeling them unsuitable for youth audiences. Behind the scenes, animators had reportedly warned producers, arguing that Adam's story couldn't be softened without betraying its essence. Producers pressed on, gambling that controversy would boost ratings. Instead, it backfired. Advertisers fled, and networks shelved the project. Critics were divided. Some praised it for staying true to the novel's stark realism. Others called it child cruelty in animated form. The resulting outrage ensured the series was buried in archives, rarely re-aired, and whispered about as a cautionary tale of how far children's animation could go. Its legacy? The 1993 Watership Down remains a banned ghost in several regions, proof that even rabbits could shake entire governments into censorship. It stands as the ultimate reminder. In the 1990s, animation could still terrify enough to vanish. From cult nightmares to censored epics, these 15 animated films prove the 1990s were not just a playground for fantasy. They were a battlefield of censorship, fear, and forgotten brilliance. Which one shocked you most? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, because some stories deserve to be remembered no matter how hard others tried to hide them.